I want to be very clear about something right from the start. After spending years on Oak Island, you develop a healthy skepticism, you learn to separate hope from evidence, you stop chasing excitement and start following facts. And that's exactly why what's emerging now deserves serious attention. Because this isn't just another anomaly in the ground. This isn't another piece of old wood or a coin that raises more questions than answers. What's being discussed right now could represent a structural discovery, something intentionally built, intentionally hidden, and astonishingly well preserved. According to information that's begun to surface, work conducted in the garden shaft has reportedly revealed something none of us ever expected to see so clearly. Deep underground, well beyond the depths where most structures would collapse, scans may have identified a perfectly formed man-made chamber, not a void, not a collapse, a room. And when I say deep, I want you to truly imagine it. We're talking about more than 100 feet below the surface, potentially over 140 feet. That's not casual digging. That's not trial and error. That's a level of excavation that demands planning, resources, and a clear objective. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. For more than 2 centuries, people have searched Oak Island believing the answers lay in the money pit. Every generation dug deeper, convinced the treasure was just a little further down. Rick has said it many times. We're still chasing that original idea decades later, but what if the real story was never directly beneath the money pit at all? What if it was close by, hidden deliberately, and protected in a way that allowed it to survive everything else that failed? According to a reported leak, the team conducted off-season sonar scans in the garden shaft that produced results so clean and so precise they were initially dismissed as a technical error. The scans were run again and then again. Each time the same image appeared, a sharply defined rectangular chamber with straight edges and uniform dimensions. That alone is extraordinary. Natural formations don't do that. Collapse zones don't do that. This was shaped, constructed, engineered. The reported size of the chamber, roughly 10 feet by 15 feet, might not sound massive at first, but at that depth it's monumental. Creating an enclosed space like that centuries ago would have required hundreds of workers, years of effort, and a sophisticated understanding of soil, water flow, and structural stability. This wasn't the work of desperate treasure hunters. This was the work of professionals. And here's where the story takes a turn that even seasoned skeptics would struggle to dismiss. The scans didn't show an empty room. Inside the chamber, sonar reportedly detected multiple dense rectangular objects resting on the floor, 3 of them large, heavy. The density readings were far beyond what you'd expect from stone or wood. These readings align with solid metal containers or chests filled with something substantial, not scattered, not broken, carefully placed. If that alone weren't enough, there's one more detail that changes everything. The interior walls of the chamber appear to be lined with a thin metallic layer. Every surface this lining may be the reason the chamber has remained intact for centuries, sealed off from groundwater, pressure, and the destructive forces that erase so much else underground on Oak Island. That changes the conversation entirely, because lining a chamber like that isn't about hiding something temporarily. It's about preservation. It's about ensuring that whatever was placed inside would survive time itself. Someone didn't just want to bury something, they wanted to protect it. Think about the implications of that. This suggests advanced planning, access to refined materials, and knowledge far beyond what most people associate with early activity on Oak Island. It raises questions about who had the capability, the motive, and the reason to go to such extraordinary lengths. Let me walk you through why this next part is so important, because once you understand it, the entire Oak Island timeline starts to shift in a way that's hard to ignore. According to the reports, the team didn't just rely on scans, The core samples were taken from the soil surrounding the chamber itself, and inside those samples were trace elements of the same strange metal detected by sonar. That matters because it confirms this isn't a scanning artifact or a technical illusion. The material is physically there. At that point, we're no longer talking about a simple vault. We're talking about something intentionally sealed and intentionally preserved. In other words, this isn't just a place where something was hidden, it's a time capsule. And that metallic lining is the detail that truly rewrites the Oak Island story. Because now we're faced with something that shouldn't exist at that depth, in that location, or in that historical context. And once you accept that, the mystery doesn't get simpler, it gets far more complex. This is where the idea of a Roman presence enters the conversation. Now, stay with me here, because this is where the evidence starts to challenge everything we think we know. Initial analysis of those trace metal elements reportedly produced a result that caught everyone off guard. The alloy appears to be a lead-silver composition. On the surface, that might not sound extraordinary, but to historians and engineers, it's a major red flag. That specific alloy was a signature of advanced Roman engineering. The Romans used it to line aqueducts to protect critical documents, and most importantly, to seal the tombs and sarcophagi of high-ranking officials and emperors. The goal was preservation. This wasn't a common building material. It was expensive, difficult to refine, and tightly associated with wealth, authority, and long-term planning. If you saw this material in the ancient world, you knew it mattered, and suddenly some of Oak Island's most puzzling discoveries start to look very different. Think back to the Roman pilum spearhead found several seasons ago, or the coin that certain experts tentatively identified as Roman at the time. Those finds were treated cautiously, and rightly so. They were considered out of place, possibly dropped centuries later by collectors or brought over long after their original era. But a massive underground chamber lined with Roman-era alloy changes that interpretation entirely, because now those artifacts don't look random, they look connected. They start to resemble markers, evidence of a coordinated, well-resourced operation carried out by people with direct knowledge of Roman technology, long before conventional history says such a thing was possible. We're not talking about accidental contact, we're talking about intent. And that's where the implications become impossible to ignore. Mainstream history maintains that Romans never reached North America, that there was no infrastructure, no exploration, no reason or capability to build something on this scale across the Atlantic. But what we're seeing here doesn't align with the story of lost sailors or isolated artifacts. This looks like planning. This looks like engineering. This looks like a deliberate, large-scale construction project executed with precision, secrecy, and resources that only a powerful civilization could command. A different explanation is beginning to emerge, one that doesn't rely on coincidence or fantasy, but on continuity. When the Roman Empire collapsed, its power vanished, but its knowledge did not. Engineering methods, metallurgy, geometry, and the understanding of how to preserve important objects were carried forward by closed networks that survived in secrecy. Over time, those networks may have evolved into groups like the Knights Templar. If that lineage exists, then what we're seeing on Oak Island isn't out of place. It's exactly where it belongs. That realization forces a shift in perspective. Rick and I may not be uncovering a forgotten treasure story at all. We may be staring at evidence that the history of North America, at least along this coastline, began far earlier than anyone is willing to admit. Not through accidental contact or drifting ships, but through deliberate, organized activity backed by resources, planning, and purpose. The Templars, if they were involved, would never have relied on a single hiding place. Their strength was strategy, They protected what mattered most through misdirection, complexity, and layered design. That raises an uncomfortable possibility. The money pit may have been engineered to fail, a focal point designed to draw effort, attention, and generations of digging, while the real objective remained untouched. Information now suggests that the metal-lined chamber does not sit beneath that famous pit. Instead, it occupies a position that only becomes meaningful when viewed through the geometry of Nolan's cross, not the obvious center, but a subtle offset point, one that would be invisible without understanding the system as a whole. That kind of placement doesn't happen by accident. It's instructional. From that angle, the chamber's purpose begins to change. It may not be a vault in the traditional sense. It could be a boundary, a ceremonial threshold, or even a symbolic grave meant to guard knowledge rather than wealth. When viewed this way, Oak Island's flood tunnels and defensive engineering no longer feel excessive. They feel appropriate. They weren't built to protect something replaceable like gold. They were built to protect meaning. The relics long associated with the Templars reinforce that idea. Objects such as the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, or the head of John the Baptist were never treated as commodities. They were preserved with ritual architecture and reverence. A Roman-style chamber, sealed with advanced metallurgy, fits that purpose far better than any crude pit ever could. What ties this together are the clues pointing toward the Knights of Malta, the Templars' successors. Those references now feel less like speculation and more like continuity. Oak Island may not be hiding a single secret, but operating as a mechanism. The island itself could be the barrier, Nolan's cross the guide. And this chamber, merely one step in a sequence designed to be understood, not stumbled upon. If that's true, then the real discovery isn't treasure at all. It's a lost chapter of history, waiting for the right moment to resurface. At some point, after years of digging and rethinking every assumption, a different picture begins to form. The money pit no longer looks like a failed attempt to hide something valuable. It looks like a deliberate construction meant to consume effort, time, and belief. A structure designed to collapse, refill, and frustrate again and again until the search itself became the punishment. If that's true, then Oak Island didn't resist discovery by accident. It resisted it by design. That realization changes the tone of everything, because if the pit was never meant to succeed, then the real story was unfolding somewhere else all along. Not deeper, not louder, not more dramatic, just smarter. The island may not reward force, it may reward understanding. This is why Season 13 stands apart. For the first time, years of scattered data have converged into clarity. The drilling results, the chemical signatures, the imaging below ground, all of it now points toward a single intentional structure. The work ahead isn't about speculation anymore. It's about access. Reaching this chamber without destroying the very thing we're trying to understand will require precision, restraint, and a level of coordination we've never attempted before. There's no hiding the risk. The depth is extreme. The conditions are hostile. And once we commit, there's no easy way back. But the difference now is certainty. We're no longer chasing a legend. We're approaching a construction, something made by people who planned far beyond their own lifetime. It's easy to dismiss this after so many false starts. Skepticism is earned on Oak Island. But skepticism fades when intent becomes visible. For years, people asked for proof of intelligence behind the mystery. A metal-lined chamber placed with purpose at impossible depth isn't an accident or a coincidence. It's a message, and messages like this aren't meant for everyone. Discoveries of this scale unfold quietly because their implications reach far beyond one island. When a find has the potential to challenge accepted history, you don't rush to conclusions. You move carefully, because what's at stake isn't just treasure, it's truth. At that point, the search stops being about wealth entirely. It becomes about presence, about who may have stood here long before the story we've been told, and what they valued enough to protect with engineering, symbolism, and secrecy. For us, this moment carries weight. This isn't just another season or another attempt. It's the possibility of closing a chapter that's been open for more than 200 years, and still beneath the ground and beyond the speculation, the island holds its final question. What lies inside that chamber, and why was it never meant to be found by chance? There's an aspect of the Oak Island story that rarely gets talked about, but it may be one of the most powerful forces shaping this entire search. What you see on camera, the fellowship, the drills, the meetings is only the visible layer. Behind it all exists a vast, unseen presence that's been working alongside us for years. Whether anyone planned it or not, over time, viewers stopped being spectators and became participants across the world. People began doing more than watching episodes. They started pausing scenes, comparing maps, rechecking measurements, and questioning assumptions. Slowly, an informal but highly motivated research community formed, people driven not by television but by the mystery itself. What makes this remarkable is the level of sophistication involved. These aren't casual theories scribbled in comment sections. Fans analyze satellite imagery to detect alignments impossible to recognize on the ground. They digitally merge historical maps with modern surveys down to exact scale. They research medieval trade routes, financial records, and obscure historical texts that even academic circles rarely revisit. In many cases, the work rivals formal research. Some ideas that later appeared on the show didn't originate on Oak Island at all. They began in online discussions, late-night debates, where engineers, historians, and hobbyists challenged each other's assumptions. Concepts like geometric alignments tied to Nolan's cross didn't emerge from a single discovery, but from collective reasoning spread across thousands of conversations. What's especially intriguing is that these conversations don't seem to go unnoticed. There's growing evidence that the production and research teams quietly observe these discussions, not to follow them blindly, but to see which ideas persist, which connections keep resurfacing, and which theories refuse to disappear even after being challenged. That means a breakthrough moment in the war room may begin far from the island, sparked by someone who never expected to influence the search at all. This creates a fascinating dynamic. The Oak Island mystery may not be unfolding in isolation, but in a feedback loop. Discoveries inspire discussion, discussion refines questions, and those questions subtly influence where attention turns next. Defies expectations, it becomes harder to dismiss curiosity outright. When news of the garden shaft chamber began circulating, the response was immediate. The online community didn't wait for confirmation. They began analyzing metallurgy, symbolic depth measurements, and historical parallels within hours. Some noticed that similar metal alloys were used by groups tied to Templar traditions to preserve sacred knowledge. Others connected chamber dimensions to symbolic frameworks debated years earlier. The fellowship may have identified the structure, but the wider community is already working to understand what it means, which leads to a powerful thought. What if the final key to Oak Island isn't hidden underground at all? What if it's been quietly forming over years of shared insight, scattered across forgotten posts, overlooked discussions, and ideas dismissed too soon? In the end, Oak Island may not be testing how deeply we can dig, but how well we can listen, connect, and think together. And that might be the most extraordinary part of the mystery yet. Okay, so I'll end the video here. We'll meet again soon with another new video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so quickly so you can get the upcoming videos on time. Okay, bye.